despite the fact that in the election, the Republicans lost the female vote by historic margins, Mitt Romney, despite at one point gaining a little bit after the first debate on Barack Obama amongst women, he ended up doing horribly. You would imagine that in the wake of that and how many times they were attacked during this electoral cycle, based on the war on women and all the crazy things that Murdoch and Aiken said, amongst others, that they would try to appeal to women. They've decided to go a different way with it. So despite the fact that 6 months ago, Senate Democrats passed a reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act that would widen the protections to include LGBT women, illegal immigrants, Native Americans, the Republicans are continuing to block it. Now, I don't believe that it's because they're in favor of violence against women, but they do seem to be slightly more in favor of violence against Hispanic women, Native American women, LGBT women, because they don't want those protections granted to them, particularly to the illegal immigrants. Now, I understand that probably underlying this position is they're worrying about it creeping into other things that will protect illegal immigrants, and maybe someday they'll all be citizens or something like that. But the fact that they're still willing to block this, are they just suicidal when it comes to courting female voters? Do they think that women won't pay attention to this?
Well, I think a couple things here. I think this is yet another example of how the Republican Party is willing to hold certain things hostage in order to get their political message across. We're seeing this right now with the Violence Against Women Act. We're seeing it right now with taxes on the upper class. And I do think that it's also showing that the Republican Party is in complete denial about who the voters of this country are. You know, we saw that with Paul Ryan, I think it was last week, said they were surprised by the urban demographic coming out to vote, which doesn't take a genius to figure out what he means by urban. And I think that although Romney did lose over the women voters by huge amounts, and it's because of all of these things. It's because that Republicans won't support the Violence Against Women Act. It's because of all of the anti-abortion legislation that they want to put through, anti-contraception, healthcare stuff, equal pay stuff. It's because of all these things that women do not vote for them, even women who may have otherwise voted Republican, who might be fiscally conservative or might agree with Romney's position on taxes or whatever it may be. They care about their own social issues, and so because of that, Republicans are losing over female voters to the Democrats, and I think this once again shows that they either just don't get it or they just don't care, and they literally think that they can win over the country by again trying what they tried this time, which is appealing to the rich, male, white, upper class demographic.
Yeah. And look, if you go back just 8 years ago, the Republicans were doing better amongst women, partially because they were keeping to themselves some of the crazy things that they thought about contraception and abortion, but also because they were able to play to women's fears about terrorism, foreign wars, and things like that. And so you had a lot of women who felt like the Republicans would be better when it comes to national security. Now, partially, terrorism, I think that people in general are sick of thinking about it. That's not one of the most important issues to them because it's been too long. And also because we drew down our forces in Iraq, we drew down our forces in Afghanistan, it seems like a less pressing threat, and so women are thinking about it less. But also, Mitt Romney, no military service. When I'm looking at the Republicans who might be running in the next electoral cycle, not a lot of veterans amongst them. So previously, the Republicans have been able to run and try to make the Democrats seem weak on national security. But now that I'm looking at the next crop of Republicans coming up, it doesn't seem likely that they're going to be able to do that again. There's not a lot of John McCain's out there anymore, unless he runs again in 2016.
Well, and when you look at that issue of war, I think what you actually see is that women are more or much less likely to want to go to war as voters overall. And here we had Romney taking this hard red line approach on Israel. Alluded to going to war with Syria, I believe. And so I think that, women are kind of standing against that too. So it's no longer what you're talking about where, we want a sense of national security and really strong there. He's talking about potentially getting us engaged in more wars, and we've been at war for so long that I think people are just sick of that.
Thankfully. My last point on this is that while the Republicans are willing to keep shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to female voters, the Democrats, thankfully, in this area are being smart politically about it, and they're continuing to attack the Republicans on it, not just in ads, but also we have a statement here by Senator Patty Murray of Washington. And she says, domestic violence protections for all women shouldn't be a Democratic or Republican issue. A 6-month delay is inexcusable. 1 day is inexcusable. Their obstruction is taking a toll on women across this country. So in the same way that during a filibuster, you're supposed to make the other side pay for what they're doing, them blocking this renewal of the Violence Against Women Act will hopefully incur some costs to the Republicans if the Democrats are smart and continue to use it as an issue to bash them with.
And the most important thing too to note here is that if we do not extend funding, if the Republicans refuse to extend funding, then this is going to reduce available resources for states to deal with victims of domestic violence. So this is really women's lives and health are really at stake here, and I think that that's a huge problem for Republicans.